In the previous chapter, Eugene enters the house where Lode had previously entered, and although he doesn't know what is behind the door he is about to cross, he realizes that a wizard is guarding the entrance, so he suspects that Lode is getting involved with black magic. That said, let's continue with the story. Then we see Eugene very furious unleash all his power, but behind the magician 2 demons that work for him appear. They throw themselves against Eugene, but he is too powerful and the demons are not worthy rivals for his strength. He ends up destroying them without any difficulty. Then the magician thinks about how Eugene could become so powerful. In any case, Eugene tells the magician to get out of the way, but he tries to block it using his powers. Eugene avoids them without haste and puts his sword against the magician's neck and warns him not to move or else he will kill him. When he enters the room, he finds a chalice that is used to make rituals, and inside it is a unicorn heart. At that moment, Eugene thinks that the unicorns have a very powerful power and mana, and that they have even been nicknamed as divine water. That means that the ritual they are going to do will be very powerful because the difference between a unicorn heart and a human heart is abysmal in terms of power. So Eugene asks the magician about the kind of ritual he is going to do and what kind of demon he intends to do it with. But the magician tells her that he is not trying to agree anything with any demon, since he intends to do it with Baron Ulfer, who is the subordinate incubus of Duchess Jabella, Queen of the Night. But Eugene knows that although this Duchess is not at the level of a demon king, she is at the level to be called Duchess. In any case, he tells the wizard that he expected more, seeing that a unicorn heart is being used. But the wizard answers that everything was Lode's request, since he was the one who bought the unicorn heart and ordered the wizard to do the ritual. Then Eugene goes to where Lode is lying down and slaps him awake. When Lode wakes up, he asks Eugene what he is doing there. Eugene answers that he has been following him, and that he also heard that Lode has had a bad situation, and he has been trying to understand what Lode is going through, and that is why he asks him not to get involved with black magic, since Lode is one of the bearers of the Lionheart name, and by the way, he is the main heir, besides trying to make a pact with something as low as an incubus. But Lode answers that everything is under control, and this makes Eugene angry, and he gives him a strong headbutt and asks him what he means by saying that everything is under control, and that he has no idea what it means to make a contract with a demon. So don't try to pretend that controlling an incubus is something as simple as it sounds. Then Lode answers that he thought it was very simple, but Eugene says very upset and explains that making a contract with a demon requires giving his soul to him. So he will have to obey everything the demon orders him to do. Even if the demon orders him to kill his whole family, he would have to do it, and not to think that demons are creatures with ethics. Then Lode tells Eugene that he doesn't know all the pain he is going through. Basically, Lode is envious because for 4 years his brother has been calling attention to him, and that's why nobody notices Lode. But Eugene tells him that it's not right, since both of them were given the same kind of support by their families, but he never knew how to take advantage of anything. Besides, Eugene has trained very hard. He has studied without resting, while all Lode does is lose himself in alcohol and drugs. In any case, Lode continues to insist on becoming a dark magician, and while he is talking, he is interrupted by a strong fist that Eugene hits him, and tells him to stop crying because of his own bad decisions. And at that moment, some guards arrive and take the wizard away. The master of the Red Tower also arrives, to which Lode must give him an explanation. But Lode insists again and again that he got involved with dark magic. Even so, the master of the Red Tower knows that this was not so, so he will send him to give explanations to Lord Gillard. That same night, they meet the Lord to talk about it, but a guy named Balzac arrives, who is the master of the Tower of Dark Magic, and is one of the 3 dark wizards, possibly more powerful. So he sits at the table where they are all gathered. But this act bothers Theenys a lot. Then the master of the Red Tower tells her to calm down because Balzac has had nothing to do with the incident with Lode. But this makes her more furious. She thinks that Balzac was the magician who was with Lode at that moment, but in reality it was a dark friend called Jevid. And Balzac assures that he had no knowledge of what that magician was up to. Besides, Jevid does not belong to the Tower of Dark Magicians. But even so, Theenys is still very angry. But at that moment the Lord spoke, saying that if the Tower of Dark Friends is not involved in the incident, then why is Balzac there? And he answers that he has to assume the responsibility in part, because even if he wasn't involved in the incident as such, many creatures that belong to the Tower of Dark Wizards were. So to patch things up a bit, he decided to take some measures, and among them is to cut off the head of the incubus that Jevid summoned to make a contract with Lode. And once again he apologizes for the inconveniences caused and leaves, but not before looking at Eugene in a mischievous way. Once Balzac leaves the place, the Lord asks Eugene to leave, and when this happens, the Lord apologizes to Loberian, the master of the Red Tower, for the inconveniences, but he tells him that it was nothing. Then the Lord wants to send Lode to the main family as punishment. But this makes Thenis very nervous, and she tells the Lord that this measure is too strict, since Lode didn't get into dark magic as such. He only tried it, and tries to explain to him that Lode will not do it again since he will take this incident as a lesson. But the Lord is radical in the decision he made, and even though Lode is his son, he will not hesitate. But Thenis gets too upset and tells him that she will not allow Lode to go to the main family, and that if that is the case, then she prefers to send him to his parents' house because there he will be able to learn magic without being repressed of his desires. And the Lord then tells the woman to do what she wants. On the other hand, Balzac meets Eugene outside the salon. He tells Eugene that because of the situation in the salon they could not have a decent conversation. But he replies that he is not interested in having a decent conversation with a dark wizard. And Balzac tells him that he understands their differences and that even if Eugene hates dark magic, Balzac also tells him that he has heard of Eugene, since the performance he had in the succession ceremony years ago was formidable, and that nowadays what he does with magic is spectacular. He also mentions something that he could not say inside the room because it was not convenient for him, but he tells her that he took some responsibilities when he became master of the Dark Tower, and that there is one thing that benefits Eugene, and that is that he is interested in writing a letter of recommendation for Eugene, so that he can be accepted in a crim. And Eugene tells him that he will receive it, but that it does not mean that they are friends. So Balzac tells him that it is more than enough for him, and without more to add, then he leaves. But when he leaves, Eugene asks him if he really had nothing to do with what happened to Lode. And Balzac answers that he is a dark wizard with a lot of pride, and that he would not dare to stain the name of dark magic with such pathetic acts, and to take that as an answer. And then Eugene leaves too and goes to his room, and stares at the unicorn heart, the same one that the Lord gave him as a reward for solving the case of Lode. So Eugene decides to take the mana from that heart since it has no impurities and is quite strong, and at the rate he is going he could reach the 4 stars of power before the age of 20. And Eugene is determined to achieve such power, for the sake of the family. But at that moment he is interrupted by the bidder telling him that the giant's testicles are worth 30 million, and that if they don't get the money before midnight then they will be put up for auction again. So they quickly go to the bank, and there Eugene pays the exuberant figure. After this they retire to see what they have bought. In that Eugene comments that he is not interested in seeing the testicles of a giant, but he will go anyway. And while they are walking, Eugene notices something strange and runs out to see. Because what he saw, or rather, who he saw, was Sienna. When she arrives at the place he doesn't know what to say to her, since she probably doesn't remember him because the last time they saw each other was 300 years ago. And he doesn't think that she will believe the story that he reincarnated just like that. So Eugene is going to hold her hand, but everything turns out to be a magic projection. Then the figure of Sienna turns to look at him, and while looking at him she disappears. Then Eugene thinks about him because Sienna would send a hallucination instead of coming physically, and comes to the conclusion that maybe she was sealed and sent that hallucination to let him know. Then Eugene gets ready to go in search of Sienna. But at that moment the man who was with him before arrives, and Eugene asks him about the red flame method, which makes him become super strong. And he teaches him the method. But Eugene tells him thanks for the show and leaves. Then we go to the Red Magic Tower, and there Eugene is looking for Sienna's texts, which are in Akrian. So he will have to take advantage of the recommendations that the masters of the Red and Dark Towers will make to him to be able to access Akrian, and to do the pertinent thing to find those texts. Meanwhile, he observes the fragment of the sword that he had bought in the auction. But he arrives to the conclusion that he must be able to assemble the complete sword. In a change of scene, we see that some days ago they have been sounding explosions in one of the rooms of the Red Tower, and when they arrive to the place they find Eugene training strongly his mana. In passing they give him the news that the master of the tower needs him, so Eugene takes his things and goes to see him. But they tell him that the master is in the royal library in Akrian, and so they go to the place. And meanwhile Eugene keeps looking towards Abraham's castle, and tells his companion that this castle is not a place he would like to visit very often. Meanwhile, his companion explains to him some things that have to do with the castle. And when they arrive at the castle gates, she tells Eugene that there are 3 people who did not agree with her recommendation to Akrian. And they were the master of the Blue Tower, the master of the Green Tower, and the master of the Mages Guild. So she tells her to earn the recognition of these 3, so that she has absolute access to Akrian. And after this, the girl leaves and wishes Eugene luck. And when he enters, he introduces himself to the masters that are there. Among them are the captain of the Friends of the Castle, Roberian, the master of the Green Magic Tower, the master of the Blue Tower, the master of the White Magic Tower, also Balzac, the master of the Mages Guild, and finally the first successor of the line of Aroth. And he tells her that he had already heard the name of Eugene and that it is good that he is finally meeting him in person. And also the master of the Blue Tower tells him that both the master of the Red Tower and Balzac have been speaking very well of him, and that makes him aware that he has talento. But he thinks about how a boy with only 17 years old is involved in magic and has already received a recommendation for Akrian. and draws his own conclusions which are not good. But then the master of the Red Tower tells Eugene that he must show his magic to those present for them to qualify it. So Eugene is ready to do so. While Eugene does her thing, all the people present contemplate the situation, and it seems that everybody is amazed, because Eugene definitely has talent controlling her mana. But everybody keeps discretion, although inside they are completely surprised. Then the master of the Red Tower asks Eugene to finish the presentation and leave the place, because the judges must talk about the subject alone, and Eugene leaves without any problem. Meanwhile, the master of the Red Tower explains to the audience that Eugene has studied the books of magic by her own, and all begin to question and debate about the subject, because in spite that Eugene is so skilled and talented for his age, this same one prevents him to enter to Akrian. And the reason is because they are simply Akrian's politics. However, some present agree that an exception can be made, so the teacher of the White Tower invites them all to make a vote, because they have spent a lot of time debating and it seems that they will not reach any agreement. Then being like that, the vote begins, and on the other side we observe Eugene contemplating the walls of the place, since he had never been there. And suddenly the teacher of the White Tower arrives, and she tells him that they finished talking and that they had to make a vote, and that the vote culminated having 5 voters in favor of him staying in Akrian and other 2 were not in favor, while there was 1 who remained neutral. So now Eugene belongs to Akrian. But he seems not to get excited at all and leaves the place. But the girl tells him to stop for a moment and asks him about his sword, which he needs to make a contract with the spirit to which the sword belongs. But Eugene refuses to present it since he assures that it is not his and that he has borrowed it. But she keeps persuading Eugene to lend her the sword. However, Eugene still maintains her position, and they arrive at an elevator because Eugene is going to the 12th floor where Sienna's books are, which is his main objective. But the teacher will not accompany him anymore, so he wishes her to have fun. And when he arrives, someone welcomes him and it seems that it is Sienna herself. Right away she tells him that she is not Sienna. She is a spirit in charge of running Sienna's salon. And Eugene asks her what her name is, and she answers that Sienna named her Mer so she can call her that. She also explains to Eugene that she was her with Sienna's spirit as a base, and that she doesn't have a soul like humans do, and that her body and consciousness were made with magic. And then she shows him Sienna's spell and that it was what she was working on for most of her life. And that's where all her texts are. They're not even in books. So Eugene goes a little closer to check while he asks Mer if he knows why Sienna retired. But Mer says he doesn't know anything. He just says that Sienna's retirement was very sudden. And Mer asks him if he's really interested in Sienna, and he says he's totally interested. And Mer says that it's not surprising if it wasn't for the fact that he is a Lionheart, and that's definitely weird. But Eugene changes the subject by asking if Sienna ever talked about her partners, and she told him about the things that Sienna talked about her partners. Eugene also asks her about that picture of Sienna that's there, but Mer tells her that even though it's her, the smile they painted is fake, because Sienna never smiled for the pictures, and she gets a little sad, but Eugene tries to comfort her. But Mer doesn't like that and tells her not to cross the line. And Raptio changes the subject and tells her that Sienna's living room doesn't have only that. It also has the equipment she used to use, and he dies to the Acacia staff, which is the most powerful in the world. And there Eugene tells us that Sienna got that staff because it was given to her by the elves, who were the ones who raised her and taught her elven magic, and that the gem in the center of the staff is a dragon heart, and that there are only 2 magic staffs in the world that use a dragon heart, and they are Sienna's and Blood Mary's, and that it used to belong to a lich named Belial, and it was Belial who in his past life killed Eugene. So he tells Mer that she can touch it, and she agrees but warns him that she cannot use magic with it, since the staff recognizes Sienna as its only owner, and that after she retired many wizards tried to become its owner but the staff did not recognize any of them. Then Eugene tries to fill it with her mana but she can't, because what Mer said was true. So Mer goes to look for a book that she says Eugene will surely like. And the book is called Adventures of the Warrior Vermouth, and there Sienna tells all the adventures she lived with Vermouth, and she also tells him to follow her because she has something else to show him. And when they arrive to the place, Eugene is completely amazed. It's about magical sculptures made with the memories of Sienna, who are her companions, and they are Vermouth, Anis, Moron, and Hamel. And after this Eugene asks Mer about what is in the upper floor of the library, and Mer answers that there are research notes, but that understanding those books would be too complicated for Eugene, and that she should understand first how witchcraft works. Then Eugene starts to think about how to materialize the sorcery with the consciousness, but Mer was talking to her about some other things, but Eugene didn't understand anything of what she said. But this doesn't surprise Mer, because so far no magician has been able to understand the magic of Sienna. So Mer tells her that in order to understand it she only has to close her eyes and open her hand and pour mana in the sphere where the texts of Sienna are. So Eugene does what Mer tells him, and ends up going into what he calls a sleep paralysis. And then he appears in a sea of mana, which throws him upwards, and suddenly he comes out of that trance, and asks Mer if he did something wrong. and she answers him that the only fact that he faints immediately is considered wrong, but that he lasted inside the witchcraft for 2 hours, and he asks Eugene how was his stay inside Sienna's witchcraft, and he answers that the only thing he saw were many circles. Then Mur explains to him about everything that happens and that the great secret of Sienna's witchcraft is in those circles, which in reality are 9. And just when they were talking, the Master of the Red Tower and the Master of the White Tower arrive. They ask him about how he was reading the texts found in Akrian, and Eugene answers that he realized that with the knowledge he has, understanding the books will take him a long time. So the teacher takes advantage of the situation to insist again that he lend her the sword. But Eugene this time thinks about it a little, and tells the girl that she has something else to offer, and she offers him a cane. But the Master of the Red Tower intervenes and tells Eugene that he has many canes and that he can lend them to her at any moment. But Eugene tells him that he doesn't want a cane. But the teacher continues to insist because for her it is like a dream, to make a contract with the spirit to which she belongs. And the Red Tower Master intervenes again saying that if he wants something valuable, the teacher has something very valuable. But the girl tries to shut him up so that he doesn't continue talking. Even so, the Master of the Red Tower talks about a dark cloak that the girl has, and Eugene seems to be quite interested in the cloak, so he asks her about it. But she tries to evade him by telling him that it is only a cloak and that it is used so that it doesn't get cold. And the Master intervenes again, saying that the cape contains the highest level of magic of the space-time type, and that it can act as a shield, since it repels attacks. And also the cape serves as a storage that can store all the magic weapons that he wants to keep there and use them whenever he wants. And Eugene says that she is interested in that cloak, but the girl refuses to accept the deal. So Eugene says that it's a pity and that she'd better go to dinner then. So she invites the Master of the Red Tower to eat, and while these two talk about food, the girl, after thinking about it and thinking about it, tells him that it's okay but that it will only be borrowed. Even so, Eugene tells her not to sing victory yet because he will have to consult the true owner of the sword, and this makes the woman hysterical. But the fact is that they go in search of the owner of the sword, who is the Patriarch's younger brother, and his name is Guillaume, who joined the Legion of Knights of the Black Lion. And the difference between the Black Lion and the White Lion is that the White Lion Knights only serve the royal family, while the Black Lion Knights obey any Lionheart. But Eugene doesn't really know how strong they can be, and at that moment a carriage arrives to pick them up, and inside there are 2 people. The teacher of the White Tower says that it is a very pretentious entrance, because she claims that she doesn't like the Lionheart family very much. But the teacher of the Red Tower suggests that she shouldn't show that dislike if she really wants to borrow the sword. Then when the carriage arrives, a girl gets off, and Eugene knows her immediately, because she is Seal, and more characters get off. But the most peculiar is the last one, which is a girl who seems to be of very high rank, and who is a melee fighter, and her name is Carmen, also from the Lionheart family, and Eugene's great aunt. But the Master of the Red Tower tells everyone that they better talk inside about the deal that the Master and Eugene are about to close, which is that for every day that the woman has the sword, then Eugene will have the cape for a year, and in case the sword is destroyed, then she will have to pay with her life. And the Mistress of the White Tower asks why, and Carmen answers that the sword is a treasure for the family and that they are not very willing to risk it for money, and that if they do not like the conditions, then they should not take the sword and leave the discussion there. Carmen tells her to decide quickly since she has to go to interrogate the magician who was with Lode the day of the incident. Then the girl thinks about how long it will take with the sword, and after evaluating the time she finally accepts the deal. And when it's all over, Carmen tells her that it's a nice cloak and that she really likes its fur. So Eugene assumes that she means she wants to try it on, since she didn't tell her directly, but it's to be expected. Then Carmen tries the cloak and without hesitation says that it's nice. And after that Eugene and Seal go shopping. And while they walk, Eugene asks her about Cyan, and she answers that she talks about Eugene all the time. And she also wants to know how much Eugene has advanced in terms of power. So Eugene also asks Seal if she heard about Loda's case, and she answers that the only thing she knows is that he is in his house and that they put a private tutor to teach him magic. And on the other hand, Carmen is with Jevid, but despite all the tortures he didn't say anything, and besides that he lost his life. But Balzac is also in the place. He tells Carmen not to try to blame him, but Carmen answers that it is not wrong to suspect a dark magician, but he doesn't have enough evidence to make conclusions. But Balzac talks about his respect for the Lionheart family, and that is why he cooperated with them to solve the matter. He understands that all this inconvenience has been a disaster even for the Lionheart family. Then Carmen asks Balzac about the incubus with whom Lode had planned to make a contract, and Balzac removes the head of the incubus because he had already fulfilled his promise to kill him. In any case, Carmen and the others leave the place, and they begin to take more theories to get to the end of that matter. Besides, he talks about the fact that some men of the Black Lion are going to the place where Lode is, and that they will not arrest him because he belongs to the royal family, but that he will be strongly guarded, because if there is someone behind all that matter, he will surely try to get in touch with the royal family. And so time goes by until they leave, and seconds before Carmen gets on the carriage, she offers Eugene to join the Knights of the Black Lion. But Eugene rejects the offer. Meanwhile, the Master of the White Tower is trying to contact the spirit that lives in the sword. This is taking more work than she expected, but suddenly the Thunder Spirit appears, telling the magician that the Wind Spirit is not interested in making contracts with her, but she refuses to stop. So the Lightning Spirit takes drastic measures with her. After 10 days, the woman goes to Eugene, and her appearance is very unfavorable. In any case, she gives her the sword even knowing that Eugene will have her cloak for 9 years. 9 because Eugene was kind and discounted him a year, and he continues reading a book. But after this, he asks Mer if Sienna was the one who wrote it, and she tells him that undoubtedly. So Eugene leaves aside the reading and goes again to see the nucleus of witchcraft, because he wants to try to enter again. And when he is inside, he notices that he no longer has the same horrible feeling, and at least he can understand the movement of the circles inside Sienna's witchcraft. 2 years have passed and Eugene is still working and studying about Sienna's witchcraft, while Mer observes and gets impatient because Eugene studies with a lot of tranquility and patience. But he assures her that he doesn't want to make a single mistake, and that's why he takes so long writing, because he wants his thesis to be perfect. And he also notices that Mer doesn't want Eugene to leave the library because basically he has been her only company since 2 years ago when he arrived. So he asks her if she is angry that he will be leaving soon, and she says why should she be? And he tells her that Sienna would have acted the same way, since Mer was made with Sienna's essence when she was young. But Mer tells him not to talk as if he knows Sienna. Then Eugene tells him that soon her thesis will be ready, and that when that happens he will come back to see her and tell her something, but that he will only tell her when the time is right. So he proceeds to say goodbye and leaves Mer completely in doubt. And that's how the first part of this manhwa ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a third part, comment below with the word boy. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.